Hello and welcome to Homegrown Hangout. Today, I want to talk about the politics of Dexter and what I think the political message of Dexter is. Now, before I get into that, I want to talk about what inspired me to make this video. That I just finished watching the series finale of Dexter New Blood, the new ending that people were so unsatisfied with Dexter's ending that they finally brought him back for this limited series to have a satisfying conclusion. At the same time, I've recently started watching a YouTuber, Skip Intro, and his series on Copaganda. Now, the link will be somewhere. If you haven't seen his videos on Copaganda, go watch them. They're great. Goes from the beginning of cop shows into spooky cops with Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Supernatural and Grimm, and the way that cop shows have evolved. It's really fascinating. I can't go into all of the detail. You gotta watch it. I put the link somewhere, but if you haven't seen it and you don't know what I mean by Copaganda, what is Copaganda? Now, when we use that term, it's based on the idea that, or the history that when television first started being a thing, it was a lot of people were like, oh, let's make shows about cops. And in order to make those shows realistic and to bill themselves as being realistic, they would hire on police officers to act as consultants. And those police officers would sign off on all of the scripts for realism, so that way the show could claim to be realistic in its portrayal of crime and the police. The problem is that the police are not unbiased, that the police have their biases. And what are those biases? That if you hand creative control to the police and allow them to sign off on what is realistic, ultimately they're going to sign off on what they want to tell. That they're going to sign off on narratives that support their agenda. And what is their agenda? That the police ultimately have the agenda that policing as an institution is good, that it's necessary for the protection of the population from crime. And that the police do a good job, and that sure, there are flaws, but they're still necessary, and that the institutions are still good. This means that all cop shows will necessarily portray the police in a positive light and will gloss over the structural issues in policing. Police brutality as the biggest one. That in doing so, in showing crime to be something that only the police can solve, that these shows ignore the structural causes behind crime. Where does crime come from? What causes crime? And the answer is capitalism. Crime mostly happens out of desperation. That when people are poor, when people don't have many good options, that you're going to pick the best option that you have. That when you're struggling, when you can barely put food on your table, feed your children, pay your bills, you're going to do whatever you can to improve your material conditions. And once you've exhausted all legal, legitimate options and still are not able to improve your material conditions, your only remaining option left is crime. That's where crime comes from. Police shows ignore that. Police shows do not acknowledge any of the issues with crime, any issues with policing, any of the sources of crime. Instead, cop good, criminal bad. Now let's talk about Dexter. Dexter Morgan is a blood spatter analyst who works for Miami Metro, specifically the homicide division of the Miami Metro Police Department. Now, what is the political message of Dexter? A lot of people will say, oh, it doesn't have a political message. Bullshit. In my opinion, all media, no matter what, is propaganda. And either that propaganda is propping up an idea as an alternative to a criticism of reality, an issue with the present worldview, and if not, then that media is propaganda for the present worldview and tacit support of it. That if you're not criticizing the way the world works, then you are complicit in its actions. Dexter's whole message, or the message of Dexter, is that bad people slip through the cracks and the police aren't able to catch all the bad people, which is why Dexter needs to kill them and needs to protect the masses from the bad people. This is a hop, skip, and a jump from democracy is not able to protect the masses from the hordes, and only the strong Ubermensch is able to protect the hordes, or protect the masses from that horde. And that the Ubermensch is fueled by a righteous darkness, and that in order to protect the sheep, you need to be a wolf who's willing to, attack other wolves who protect sheep. That's ultimately the narrative of Dexter, which is why my opinion is that Dexter is fascist propaganda. I don't think it's on purpose, but that's the narrative that Dexter has. That Dexter criticizes the police not because they violate the liberties of poor people who are trying to survive, but that the police don't go far enough. They're not brutal enough in hurting the bad people, and that we need to extrajudicially kill them. And that Dexter cultivated a fan base who loved Dexter and wanted to live vicariously through Dexter and have Dexter feed their dark side. That the show, it tries to say, oh, no, Dexter's not justified, he's the villain. But Dexter's the narrator, that he's going to present himself in the most positive light. And that the show tries to present Dexter as a villain, but the only way it does is to tacitly retort, but killing bad. You can't kill people, you're bad. And that is not convincing for Dexter's fans, who see it as justified. That any criticism, any internal within Dexter criticism of him not being justified is not able to square with what's going to happen to those bad people without Dexter. That even though the show tries to play off, oh no, we don't support Dexter, Dexter's not good, Dexter's the bad guy, it's not going to convince the fans. The fans are ultimately going to see Dexter as justified. And that failure to combat Dexter's arguments of his necessity is what makes it fascist propaganda and what galvanizes the fans. That Dexter tries to rectify it with its ending, and it ends in a way to show Dexter as a villain. And ultimately, I liked the end. The ending was what was able to finally get me to realize, oh, Dexter's not the good guy. And it took that ending for me to realize it, but for the people who don't realize that and bought the propaganda, that failure of an attempt to show Dexter as a villain is not convincing enough. And they go, oh, no. That ending sucked. Dexter good. Killing people good. If they're bad. No, killing people bad. Even if Dexter does a really bad job of counter-arguing. And that's it. That is my political analysis of Dexter. And if you liked this, if you want to hear me talk about Dexter more, message me. I'll just talk to you about Dexter. I like it. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, do all the things that the algorithm wants you to do so that I can spread my message to others. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Peace.